All right, guys. Uh, Look, good practice today. You know, first day with the whole group here, so felt really good about what we were able to get accomplished, and got some good work in. So go ahead, I'll answer your questions.
Dennis, you've been asked numerous times over the last few weeks if Marshall Lattimore was going to be here, and every time you said he is, and he was. Your early initial impressions of 23.
Well, first of all, I would say this. Lattimore's never missed a mandatory, event, so I kind of expected that, he would be here. I think I'll reserve kind of judgment till I get a chance to really watch the tape. I wouldn't say that anything necessarily stood out to me one way or the other. I know he made one nice play over there on the boundary over there. So, but listen, to have both him and Alvin here, I thought was good, and we were excited about having him here. Thank you.
It was all my idea, not those.
What kind of physical condition did you see Alvin in? He's generally a guy who stays in shape.
Yeah, look, I thought, he had to be in fairly decent physical condition to get through these elements out here today. I mean, it was hot out here today, so I thought he looked explosive. There's a couple of really good runs that I was impressed with. So again, like I said, both those guys being out here was a positive, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them.
Is Alvin behind a little bit in the new offense because he just showed up, or is it?
Well,
I mean, in the big scheme of things, when relatively speaking, it's not really.
I would say that remains to be seen. I didn't get a sense that he was behind today, in terms of being able to get lined up, being able to execute his job. I think there might have been one protection that he might have been off on. I have to go in and look at it, but I thought for the most part he was on point with his assignments and what he needed to be doing. I think the biggest thing that we have to be able to do. I'm not worried about Alvin really knowing what to do. He's really smart and he's a professional. He works hard at it. It's really more about getting the rhythm and the timing, not just in the passing game, but also in the run game, and making sure you get a feel for the tracks and how these particular plays need to be run and what that feels like. So that's probably where we're going to have to play a little catch up and make sure we're all on the same page there.
And also, what about chemistry with an offensive line that's relatively young and might have 3 new players? I mean, there is a lot of chemistry between runners and the blockers, isn't there, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's all part of the everything's orchestrated, and everything has to be, on point. The 5 guys up front have to be working together. The fullback has to be able to take the right path. The tailback has to take the right path and know when to put his foot in the ground, when to keep stretching it. So those are all things that take time to get the feel for. And look, the ball plays they're not new plays. These are things that we've done around here. But how we're teaching it and how we're asking it to be executed, there's some distinct differences.
How true is the evaluation on the offensive and defensive line when they can't really touch each other?
Well, look, I would say there's not really any true evaluation of anything going on right now, just because you're limited in terms of what you can do from a contact standpoint, right? So I think you can get a feel, but I certainly don't think any decisions could be made based off what we're seeing out here right now. And the good news is we got plenty of time to do that, and training camp will be that time, so we'll have plenty of time to make those evaluations. But I wouldn't overload my stock in anything that you're seeing out here right now.
What do you like about seeing Jonathan Abram working with Tyrann Mathieu, and then vice versa when Jordan's in there as well?
Yeah, well, look, I think all 3 of those guys are really smart, so I think that benefits us. Jordan, for being a young player, is highly intelligent, and I think Jonathan Abram, that's how he's been able to sustain himself in this league is through using his intelligence and his brain. And so I think that can be a decent little group of guys back there in terms of the safety position.
And is your kind of youth and athleticism you have on the offensive line, is it a benefit with this scheme that you're bringing in this year, this running scheme?
Yeah, look, I think having athletes, in general, regardless of what you're talking about, I think is a benefit. And certainly some of the things that we're asking our offensive line to do, in terms of their ability to get to the second level, in terms of their ability to, reach and run and cut guys off and do those things. Obviously, the more athletic you are, the better you're able to do that, and yet it's still a power game. It's still a big man's game, and you still have to be able to. It's one thing to say I can get to a spot. It's another thing to say I can move a guy off that spot, and so that's what you have to be able to do. And we'll find more out about that when we get to training camp.
We didn't see Juwan Johnson. Is he dealing with an injury or anything?
Yeah, look, Ryan Ramczyk is excused. And then anybody else you didn't see out here today would be dealing with either an injury or an illness.
Dennis, the undrafted free agent players, you got a D2 player, Kyle Sheets out of South Iran. What do you want to see out of them right now, this stage of the game?
Yeah, look, I think anytime you're dealing with an undrafted free agent, I think what you're really looking for is, man, what are they doing to stand out? And I had this discussion with the team earlier is if you're an undrafted free agent, you have to do something to distinguish yourself from the rest of the guys. Otherwise, I don't even know who you are, and so I'm looking for those guys to, do something that makes me notice them. And certainly I think it's easier at the, receiver position and some of the things that you can do in the passing game or as a runner. Some of those things, it's a lot harder to do in this environment, as a defensive player or somebody up front.
For Ramczyk being excused, is it just a matter of hey, take some time and see where you're at, or is there it could be rehabbing here theoretically? What's
Yeah, no, I think the plan all along is for him to have been in back home, resting. Doing his rehab plan there. We got a plan for him. Certainly, we don't have to make any decisions now, but I haven't seen the progress that I was hoping to see. And so, we just got him at home doing his rehab there.
I said similar stuff a few months ago about the progress. Where is it now? Is it still trending in a negative direction, or?
I would say it's not trending in either direction right now in terms of the progress, so I wouldn't say there's been much change since the last time we discussed it.
Well, what kind of timeline do you have at this point as far as recovery?
We don't have a timeline.
With Chase, did you talk to the doctor, or you said last week that maybe you get
Yeah, look, he's gonna go out and see Dr. Watkins at some point this week, and so we'll have a better feel for where he's at probably after this week.
Coach, we've heard in this new offense that yards after catch may be something that's improved a lot. Is that something you're looking forward to and seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a place where we need to improve. I don't think we've done a good enough job in yards after catch. Look, some of that's scheme related, some of that's technique related, guys being able to catch the ball, get north and south, rather than running from sideline to sideline. I think that's an area that we've got to improve on. Offensively, I think we've left some yards on the field the past couple years in that area. And look, some of the run after catch I think will be scheme related, and the timing and the rhythm and the passing game, getting the ball out of the quarterback's hand a little bit faster, might allow for us to create a little bit more separation early in the down and get a little bit more run after catch.
Dennis, right now, who is in your mind? I know you're not playing in a week. Would be like the starting nickel corner or the nickel slot guy?
Yeah, I think as we sit here right now, Alontae Taylor's that guy.
Is he willing to want to really do that? How
Yeah.
is his confidence level there?
Yeah, I think his confidence level is good. I think there were some areas that he could have improved on from last year. I think he's approached it the right way. He's working extremely hard at it. He's a talented player. And look, I would say, to be too harsh on him for his performance last year, I think would be a little unfair, in that you're talking about a young guy that's, basically playing a position that he really hadn't played. And so, those things take a little bit of time to get a feel for, and I think you'll see an improved player in that area this year.
In what ways have you seen growth in that role from him just in forward?
Well, I think just his understanding of what we're asking him to do right now is 10 times, 20 times more than what it was at this point last year. So the floor that we're starting at is much higher than where we started at, last year. And so we're really basically, our floor this year is what our ceiling was last year. You with me? And we're hoping to build on that.
When
Dennis, how about
Kool-Aid McKinstry comes back, is that where you anticipate?
I see him competing in that spot, along with the outside corner position. And so, I don't really see anybody being just a nickel only. I see that position being a dual position player. So whether it's nickel safety, nickel corner, we don't have anybody on our team that's just a nickel only.
With Voluntary,
Go ahead, Ed.
Say what day you're going to start practice in Voluntary? Please tell us that.
The 24th is the first actual practice day. 24th. 23rd we'll do a conditioning test, and the 24th will be our first day of practice. July 24th.
You mentioned the elements. How did you think the team did in it? And are y'all doing anything special to combat it at all? Or hydrating a lot?
We're just hydrating a little bit more. Look, we're gonna face a lot of things, a lot of adversity throughout the season. A multitude of different things. The weather being one of them, the elements being one of them, and so you got to be able to block those things out and focus on the task at hand. So I thought overall we did a good job of that today.
How close is Kool-Aid to being ready to practice with the team and get on the field? He did some drills today.
Yeah, so he was pretty much on the side for the most part today. He went through the walkthrough, and then he was on the side with the trainers for the most part. Look, I think he's getting closer, and my expectation is that he'll be ready to go for training camp.
Yeah, just for clarity on the absences, other than Ryan, the injured players, they're all here at the facility today?
They're all here.
Dennis, Eric McCoy seems like a guy who's had a little bit of a leadership role in that locker room the past couple of years, but using a couple 10-year vets, Ramczyk not being here, is he kind of elevated that role?
Yeah. And look, I'd say he's had a lot of bit of leadership in that room over the last couple of years. I think that's been part of the role that I think he's embraced, and I look for him to take another step forward in that area this year.
How do you feel about your receivers as a whole? Are you kind of looking for a third to emerge, or collectively, how do you?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're first day of vet minicamp, so I'm not getting really too much into where I see guys in terms of evaluation. Guys are out here working hard. All of that, the rest of that's going to sort out, as we get closer to the season.
Coach, Derek played one series in preseason last year. I know hindsight's always 20/20, but knowing that you have a new offense, would he theoretically play a little more in August, or have you thought about that at all?
Well, that's a two-part question. Have I thought about it? Yes. Am I ready to talk about it? No, not right now. So, but I'd say theoretically anything's on the table. All good? All right, thanks, guys. Yep.
Fire away, guys. How we doing?
Great. How are you?
Awesome.
So with the new kickoff rule, there's one team that was reported as potentially trying a safety at kicker. Do you expect that to be something we potentially see more of? And how would you sort of prepare your kickers in tackling drills or anything?
Yeah.
Anything like
No,
that?
listen, I saw those comments by Coach Tobe, who's a close personal friend. So, I understand the theory of maybe putting a position player back there. Here's the problem with that. The issues arise because the placement of the kick with the new rules is at a premium. And so if you have a position player that can really place the ball, then absolutely that could be a benefit to you. The problem is the risk reward of getting a bad kick, because the penalty for getting a bad kick is really, really high with the new rules. Because if, the other day we were out here practicing, and obviously if the ball goes out of bounds, the ball goes to the 40. If the ball lands short of the 20, it goes to the 40. So if a position player mishits the ball and say it lands on the 21-yard line, the drive start's going to start at the 40. So it sounds great in theory, and I've heard a lot of coaches talk about maybe some alternative kicks, some line drives, because obviously the hang times are relevant. Got it. Maybe some knuckleball types of kicks, and listen, we're like everybody else. We've taken a look at all that stuff too. Again, it's going to be a risk reward. It might be a situational thing. For me to sit here and think that someone's going to do that 100% of the time, I think that's a little bit aggressive, if you will. And again, I say that because the field position is going to be at a premium. Again, if you hit a touchback, a regular touchback, ball in the air, lands in the end zone, it's coming to the 30, the ball hits the ground, skips in, touchback, it's going to the 20. To run the risk of a team starting at the 40-yard line with this new rule is just something that I think is going to be maybe tried out in the preseason. I think, listen, more than ever before, these preseason games are going to be really fun to watch from a special team standpoint. Everybody, the fans, the coaches, the players, everybody's going to have their eyes on it because it really is a first. We could stand out here and simulate as much as we want in practice, but until we get to those games, we're not really going to get a full idea of what the whole play. There's been a lot of estimates and a lot of guesses and a lot of guesstimates on what it's going to look like, including ourselves, but until we kind of get into action. So, I've seen a lot of those comments about position players and different kind of kickoffs and things like that, but I think it'll be really, really interesting to see how that plays out.
Coach, along those
Another check in the Taysom Hill box. I mean, he was a kicker in high school.
Well, listen, he's the backup everything here, so I think Taysom's listed on the depth chart at like 15 different spots. So yeah, listen, he was our emergency guy in the past. So, but no, like I said, the kickoff location might end up being, who knows, because no one knows, but it might end up being one of the more important aspects of this new play, where that ball lands. And if you can have a guy that consistently land the ball in the premium locations, wherever those might be, that's going to be really, really important. So, we'll work on that again tomorrow. We'll work on Thursday, so it's going to be good.
Coach, along those lines of working on the theories, have you already decided you're definitely going to use Taysom and top running backs in that return role, or what's the risk reward on? I mean, obviously, traditionally you didn't.
Yeah.
But
listen, I think with the way the new rule is, because it's really lowered the injury risk, and now it has essentially become the first play of offense and the first play of defense. I think your whole roster is available to you. And listen, some of it might be situational. You might not use Alvin Kamara 100% of the time, but Alvin Kamara is probably going to be back there at some point, back there lined up at returning, And AK and I have had that conversation. Same thing with defensive players. You might not have defensive starters out there every single kickoff, but if you're kicking off at the end of a game and you have a pretty good idea they're going to return the ball, you may have 2 or 3 of your defensive starters out there, which you didn't have those guys in the past. And so, as you start to think through all the different things and the way it changes the game, think about the end of a half, right? At the end of a half in the past, if there was 4 seconds left, you could squib kick it and kind of, run out the half, if you will. You can't do that anymore. The clock doesn't start until the ball touches a player. The ball's got to make it to the landing zone on a fly. And so, what do you do in those situations? Do you kick a touchback? Do you kick a layup down there in the setup zone and let them return to get the time off the clock? So a lot of those game management situations are also going to be very, very different. I think that's probably a little bit one of the under the radar things that's coming along with this new rule, is that some of those end of the game situations and scenarios are going to be interesting. A team scores with 2 seconds left to take the lead, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. All right, well, you can't just kick a little dribbler and end the game. You've got to put the ball down there in the landing zone, so the game's essentially not over. And so I think some of those end of the game situations are going to be much more exciting than they were in the past. And I think that's where you're going to see maybe some of those position players, those high-profile guys, maybe show up a little bit more.
Darren, what have y'all, all those in-the-game situations, what have y'all done to prepare for this? I mean, I know Randy Miller was here. I know he had experience. I mean, have y'all picked brains of guys that have been active with us in other leagues to find out those strategies?
Yeah, I have spoken to a bunch of the guys that certainly coach in the XFL. Myself, DA, we watched every single XFL kickoff, every scenario, 1 second left, end of game situations. We've already started to prepare the team. But again, Jeff, no one's done it. So it's other than the guys in the XFL, which again, I know everybody kind of falls back to that because it's the most relative thing, but there are a lot of differences also. And so it's really never been done before, so that's going to be interesting. But the end of the game scenarios in the XFL are very relative. And so we have watched a lot of those. We've actually watched those with some of the players already as well. And we'll still continue to educate the guys as we go. It kind of feels like every time we have a special teams meeting, we throw a little more, another nugget at them. All right, hey, this is something we haven't thought about. Hey, this is something we haven't thought about. So, I'll give you guys one. You guys have seen the rule before on the sideline where if a player goes over to the sideline and gets a foot out of bounds and touches the ball's essentially out of bounds. Well, that's something that no one's thinking about. That's now the same with the 20-yard line across the field. So if I'm a player and back one of the returners and I get myself up over the 20-yard line and touch the ball, I'm out of bounds. That ball's going to the 40-yard line. Something we've never, ever, ever seen before. And so those are because the 20-yard line will be officiated just like the out-of-bounds line. So essentially, you now have a third out-of-bounds line added to the field on kickoffs. So there's going to be a lot of things that deal with that 20-yard line that we've never, ever seen in the NFL ever before. And so that's going to be a really interesting aspect of it.
So how does this change how you coach, having to implement all these new things that people haven't seen before?
Yeah, listen, it's a challenge, and it's a welcome challenge. Phil Galliano and I are having a lot of fun with it. At the same time, there comes a little bit of angst because, again, it's one of those, it's one of the things. It's a first. It's just the first time it's ever been done, and so I think the training of all the players is very important. Having everybody understand the rules. We've sat in there in team meetings multiple times so far and educating everybody. Every single guy on the team on all the different aspects of the rules, how they're going to relate to the end of the game scenarios, even with the quarterbacks, and so it's been pretty neat. And I'll be honest with you, it's been trial and error. I mean, we've already tried some things, and I'm like, there's no way we're doing that. And we've tried some things, and I'm like, this looks really good. And whether it's blocking technique or a complete scheme on how we're going to run a return, or kickoff, how the guys are getting off the line, or where your eyes are, all those little intricacies. And so, I think that's why I said earlier about the preseason games. And we're going to not only have eyes on our preseason games, we're going to have eyes across the league on the other 31 teams on how people are doing things. Because I think the quicker everyone figures this out, both coaches and players, it's going to be a major advantage to certain teams.
So do you feel like you have a leg up at all, having been so involved in creating this, or is everyone kind of on the same?
Well, listen, I think I know I understand the rules. That I definitely know. Whether or not I have a leg up, I think we're all kind of at the starting line right now, and because it's a whole new world out there. We're going into a whole new frontier of special teams football, and so I think I definitely maybe have a very good understanding of what the rules are all about, but the actual application of the rules and the schemes and the all that's all brand new to everybody. So
a guy like you, this time last year, we were all trying to figure out how to pronounce Blake's name. Now he's kind of coming in as the guy. What have you seen from him this year? Is he just a little more confident kind of going in?
Listen, like any rookie going into year two, you kind of guy's been through the process already. There's nothing that he hasn't been through yet, and so this time of year is great. Listen, today we had a nice 20-mile-an-hour left-to-right wind, which we don't see a lot of. It's good for us to get practice at. I mean, we don't play many outdoor games on grass with so just to get that work today was pretty cool. Definitely more confident. I see him out here. Obviously, we have Charlie from Ireland, and I see him out here coaching him up a little bit because here's a guy that's brand new to the whole thing, and so But I think him and Lou, never really had an off-season before. And so to kind of see those guys attack this off-season, I've seen a major improvement in both guys. They got a chance to get a little rest, and then they've kind of been working on the things that they felt like they needed to work on the most. And so I see both those guys doing that out here. Obviously everyone talks about that big jump from year one to year two. I think we'll see that out of both guys this year. I do.
And then going back to the kickoff rule,
yeah.
A guy like JT Gray, who's always been so good at getting down there, does this kind of limit him a little bit?
far as?
You know, I think it really depends on, honestly, it depends on how you end up playing it. I think the kick return is going to end up being a big time matchup game. There's going to be a lot of one-on-one blocking. There's going to be, it's kind of like hockey. It's like kind of like line shifts in hockey. You know, they have their big guys, we got our big guys. They got their fast guys. You know, same thing with basketball. It's going to be a little bit of a personnel matchup, Steve. So some teams may go bigger, we may have to go bigger. Some teams may go smaller, and vice versa. We're trying to find out and figure out the best combinations for what we're going to do on our kickoff. I can tell you, JT's to let the cat out of the bag. He'll be one of the guys out there for sure. And I don't think it limits him. In some ways, it could help a guy like that because, you know, JT's been a guy that's always been kind of targeted for double teams and things like that, where maybe he could create some more single blocks and might be able to be a little bit more productive. And so, again, those are all things that are going to play out. It'll be interesting to see how that does. But the ability to move guys around on the kickoff team, and that's what all the coaches are trying to figure out right now.
Is there an example of something that you tried and then ruled out that you could share on kickoff?
I don't want to be too specific, but we've, you know, just the blocking technique. Think about the front line guys in the setup zone. That's a really difficult technique. The old way and the new way is really difficult. And so because those kickoff players were only 5 yards away and they're getting a jump start on you, we've been kind of messing around with techniques on how to either drop, attack, level, footwork, back, kind of like a defensive back would, kind of like almost like a man-to-man coverage. And so we kind of ruled out a couple of the techniques we first started with in terms of how we were going to do some of that stuff, whether it's the drop depth or the footwork. And so the body angles, you have to have a foot on the line. So how do I stand? Left foot, right foot, both feet, and so there's been some of that stuff. Again, I don't want to get too detailed on it, but that's, just kind of messing around with that exact technique has been interesting.
So it seems like y'all have spent a lot of extra time in meetings on all of the new rules and things like that. Have y'all spent extra time in practice on it yet, or is
We
it
have.
expected?
This time last year, we had not practiced as much kickoff return as we have this year. The main focus this time last year was clearly on punt and field goal a little bit more, not as much kick return. Tomorrow we'll get a little bit 11 on 11 going the next 2 days actually, and we really hadn't done a whole lot of that in the spring before. We kind of saved that towards the end of training camp, where now we want to see, we've kind of done a whole, kind of installed the entire thing, and now we've been kind of working on sections of it, and now we're going to kind of put it all together. So that's something we haven't really done before in the 5 years that I've been here. So that's definitely something new in terms of the application of the rules.
You had one of the, arguably, I don't know if you agree, but one of the more unconventional punters in the NFL last year. And what went into the thinking, essentially doubling down on him for a second year? What kind of factored into that?
Well, I think I don't read a whole lot of media, but I have seen some of the stuff come across my desk about all the things that Lou did poorly. But we've focused on all the things that he's done well. We were one of the top 5 teams in the league in return yards against, total return yards against, pinning people back inside the 20, field position, all that. So we kind of want him to pick up where he left off there, and we want him to improve on some of the aspects of his game that he needed to improve on, some of the conventional punt stuff. We feel like if he can add that stuff to what he already did last year, the sky's going to be the limit for him, because as you know, I've seen a lot written about his hang times and all that kind of stuff, which again, I know I've talked to you guys about that before. A lot of the punts he hit last year, we weren't trying to get hang time on him, so I kind of chuckle myself when I look at some of those stats. So it all depends on what we're asking the guy to do. We asked him to be more of a placement punter, limit the return yards against punter, and he did that. We asked him to, when he had the opportunity to pin teams back and make them go the long field, he did that very, very well. So there was plenty of things he needed to work on, just like every other player, and so that's what we're kind of focusing on here. But the couple times he's been out here so far working on conventional punting, he's really improved on that in the offseason. So I think that's something we can add to his game. I think he's just going to continue to improve. So
he obviously has the leg for the booming,
yep,
flip the field punt, you think?
Yeah, I think there was a narrative out there that he didn't have a lot of leg strength because of some of the numbers, which I think is a false narrative. He does. It's just we didn't ask him to do a whole lot of that, which we may ask him to do more of that this year coming up.
Darren, just,
yep.
I know the follow-up
yeah, all good.
We're talking about, but
yeah,
everything you say makes sense, and obviously the lack of return yards is
yeah,
the number that stands out. But net average still being sort of the end-all, be-all. Like,
yeah.
What led to him having one of the lower net averages in the league?
A lot of it has to do with where we're punting the ball from. You'd be surprised at how many times last year, or maybe not, how many times we punted the ball between the 40s. So when Phil and I break down this season, sometimes numbers can lie to you, right? So if you're punting the ball a lot of times between the 40s, you don't have the gross potential and the net potential because the field is limited. Right. We didn't have a lot of punts backed up last year. Our offense did a heck of a job of getting the ball and kind of getting those couple of first downs. We had very minimal punts from a backed up position. So you shrink the field, and so your gross and net capability goes way down. And so sometimes that's how the numbers can lie. Well, that's why his numbers, return number average against was very good, and that's why his pin percentage was very good because we had a lot of punts from the middle part of the field. You know, and so that's why some of those numbers can sometimes not tell the whole story.
You sound like an economist.
And on that note, I'll see you guys.
Yeah, I have a strategy question for you.
Sure. Yeah, all good.
Did Blake talk about